Hey folks, I was going to do a longer video with this car. I've been kind of putting it off because I've been, kind of trying to figure out when to make the time for it. But so this video may not be as long as I originally planned. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes. Maybe this will be almost a preview, a longer video, but we'll see. And you can kind of see I'm working with a different camera angle tonight just to kind of make this work, I think. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So, I thought what I'd do tonight is, you can see this car sits on the shelf, and it's pretty dirty and dusty because it's not covered, and it sits on a shelf I don't go to in another room too often, so it's built up quite a bit of dust. So I think I'm gonna just try to clean this up before I, and put it away, and I'll just kind of have a little ramble while I do that. So first I'm going to take it off this base. So I started with the mission of removing the car from the base, but it turns out this car does not want to come off this base. It's been sort of glued on in some way, so I'm going to have to work around that. So that's why there's a little edit there. It wasn't a way. It wasn't going to come apart. So I'll just start by working on the base first, I guess, and try to clean that up as best I can without taking the car off of it. So this car is a Formula 1 car, if you're familiar with Formula 1. So this car is Michael Schumacher's 1995 Benetton. And might have to get a Q-tip to get in there. Let's see how that's going to work. So this was his second year at Benetton. He went to Benetton in 90. Wait, that's not right. This was his second championship winning year with Benetton. Yeah. He won with the 1994 car. And that's one reason why this car carries the number 1. You can see on the nose there. So the winner of the World Championship can elect to use number 1 on their car if they'd like to. Not all drivers do that, but most do. And usually the team wants to do that anyway because they can get the visibility for the advertisers and so on to say that they're a winning team. So these cars in the 90s, they were V10s in this era. And it's called kind of the V10 era. And they, for me, there's a new racing series, Formula E, which is electric. And it's great. I mean, it's cool. It's probably the future. But for me, a part of Formula 1 is just that raw sound. And so these cars had pretty incredible sound. You had some nice sounding cars in the 80s as well, in the turbo era, and also some of the big Lamborghini V12s and things like that. But these cars were pretty amazing sounding. And I'd take them over the current Formula 1 cars sound-wise any time. And this was an era when they had cut out a lot of the electronics. Not all of them, but or a lot of the driver assist anyway. Some of it. For a while there, the cars had everything, anti-lock brakes and active suspension, and they were quite sophisticated. But a lot of that had been outlawed when this era was going on. And so these V10 engines in this era of Formula 1, they They revved up to 20,000 RPM. They produced some 850 horsepower. I'll get a Q-tip for some of that, but I think I'll do one pass on the rest of the car first. And then maybe grab a Q-tip. Yeah, it would be the opposite of ASMR sound to listen to these engines, but if you're ever in the mood to hear, a crazy screeching engine, you can find YouTube videos of these V10 Formula 1 cars back in the day, screeching around the track. Now, I'm going to work on the car just a little. Now, I have to be a little more careful with the car itself because I don't want to get it too wet and take off any of these decals or anything like that. I just want to take off a little layer of dust here. Like I said, I think I'll get a Q-tip to get some of these other areas that I can't really get into with this rag. But I can at least get a kind of first pass with this rag. So this is, as I noted, Michael Schumacher's 1995 Benetton. And he did win the world championship with this car. He was a controversial figure when he was racing. I guess a lot of the winners and competitive drivers are. I think it's on Netflix. There's a Schumacher documentary. I might have to use the Q-tip on some of this part too. I don't want to break that off. This car's already had a couple things broken off. See that mirror is flopping around and the other one's totally missing. So I don't know when that happened with this car, but at some point that got broken off. I don't know if you can see some of the design elements on these cars in this era. And the specs with these Formula 1 cars is, there's a lot of rigorous specs they have to live up to in terms of the dimensions, the wing, how big the wings can be, where the wings can be placed, things like that. There's a lot of rules about these cars. But even so, there's a lot of rules. There's still, each car is built bespoke by the teams. And so not every car doesn't look alike, and you get that engineering battle in addition to the drivers battle to win these championships. So you've got to have a good car and a good driver. Yeah, it's going to be interesting how I'm going to get the dust underneath that so they can't get the car off the sort of stand roadway thing here. So we'll figure something out. I think a Q-tip is going to be required for some of that under there as well. Maybe I can get a paper towel under there, a damp paper towel under some of it. So this was before Michael Schumacher changed his helmet. In the early years, he had this design with the kind of the German flag colors in the center. It's white and white on top and bottom there, and then he had this pattern with like the blue stars on top. So later, I think it was, I want to say the year 2000, I think he changed his helmet to all red. He still maintained the stars on top, but the helmet that was when he was with Ferrari later. And he changed his helmet's design to be all red with the blue stars pattern on top later. And I forget all the reasons for that. I mean, part of it might have been just that he was at Ferrari, but I think it had something to do, somebody else had a similar helmet and he wanted to be more unique. So I remember some story like that. So yeah, the experience of Formula One to me, like I said, is a lot of it is the sound. I mean, it's so amazing. It's so, just rips your heart out, the sound. It's almost scary how loud these things were in this era in particular. Especially in some of these areas where they'd go through tunnels and things like that. That sound would just be stuck in that space. Just blow you away. I liked the design, how this car looked better than the 94 car. I thought this was a better scheme, better looking car. The 94 car also had a V8 engine, one of the last cars of that era to run a V8. Okay, I think I'm going to get a toothpick and work on this some more. Give me a sec, I'll be right back. Okay, let's see if I can do anything with this little Q-tip. Don't want it too wet. Better. Let's see what I got. That's pretty dirty. I think I'm gonna go to a clean side and try to get some of this back here. Getting in that little space is hard too. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not in frame very well for you, but I'm sorry, I'm working on this wing. Yeah, all these specs would have been how many wings it could have, how many slats could be in there, size of the tires, all kinds of limitations, the wheelbase, the total width, the total length, where the nose can be. There's all kinds of, they have to build the cars all within those specs. So I must have taken a little bit of paint off somewhere because I've got a piece of paint on there, so I don't know where that came from. You can see the sponsor for this car was Benetton. Well, actually, it wasn't even the sponsor per se. That was the team. It was the Benetton racing team. A little bit of the paint has come off there. I mean, this isn't going to get this car perfectly clean, but it's going to be quite a bit better than it was. I'm going to get a fresh Q-tip. Let's try this again. Kind of get in some of this space in here. Behind, these are called turning vanes. That's what this little aerodynamic piece there is called, a turning vane. Unless they've renamed it. It certainly was called a turning vane at one point. I don't know if maybe they've come up with a different name now. Well, my Q-tip's getting dirty, so that's clearly indicative that we're getting something off the car. So that's a good sign. So yeah, this suspension on these race cars like this type of a open wheel race car, and other ones too have this kind of, some of these suspension tricks, but they got rid of the rules and didn't allow them. I may have mentioned this in some of the other Formula One videos I've had, but they eliminated the rules for, or they added the rules to eliminate, electronic type active suspension in these cars. And so the engineers were so creative that they came up with a system that wasn't as good, but it certainly was pretty amazing, with this bell crank idea where they used two different springs. So the advantage of the active suspension, for going fast is that they could have high downforce in the turns and keep the suspension and make the suspension as stiff as it needed to be to make that work. And they could also then have that downforce not compress the car on the straights, so that it wouldn't bottom out on the straights. They can make the suspension stiffer from all that downforce down the straight, so the car wouldn't bottom out. So it could be pliable to maneuver in the turns, and then but still be able to have high downforce without bottoming out down the straight. So the way that they made that same idea work without that kind of active suspension is they have this bell crank system that uses two springs. There's I guess you could call it the strong spring and the stiff spring. A stiff spring and the soft spring. And the way that works is inside here, where this is where the springs are, and this is the push rod that holds the front suspension, that puts that pressure on the front suspension. Well, that's connected with a bell crank system where there's a small spring and a heavy spring. And if both wheels push up at the same time, it engages the heavy spring, which is for going down the straight. So as that downforce pushes that pressure onto that bell crank, or into that system, the strong spring is activated. But when one wheel at a time moves up, it lets it pivot on that bell crank system, and then the softer spring is controlling, letting the car be more pliable for the turns. It's pretty ingenious and pretty cool. And I don't have a diagram of that. I might be able to pop one up. We'll see if that works out. But it's just a cool design that the engineers were able to come up with something mechanical to achieve what they were doing and what had been outlawed through an active suspension system. Now, it didn't really do everything that active suspension did, but at least it dealt with that one major thing, that you could have that situation where you had the pliability for the turns and low speed handling, but you could still have high downforce to go down the straight and have it handle that without bottoming out. So that's pretty cool. Getting into some of these spots is kind of challenging, even with the Q-tip. I don't think I can get in there too well. Still going to try to get under this car somehow. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that. So you can see it's not absolutely clean, but it's quite a bit cleaner than it was when we started. And again, I want to be kind of gentle with it because it's pretty fragile. There's quite a few loose pieces that can break off, or the paint might come off. This is pretty old, as I said. This is a 1995 car. And this model is from that era too. It wasn't made later. Okay, I'm gonna try to see if I can get a paper towel underneath the car. I just don't know if that's gonna be viable in any way. Let's see here. Would that work? Maybe a little bit. Maybe I'll give it a try. Just get it a little bit damp. See if I can get that under there in any way at all to do anything useful. This is probably not a very creative solution to this problem. I'll have to think about some other ways ways of dealing with this. Yeah, I tried to get the car off the roadway piece, which I had never done before with this car. Some of the other ones I have, I am able to remove the car from the sort of stand that it's on. This one seems like they glued it on here in some weird way, and so I didn't want to break the car. So I gave up. But I just can't get under that wing very good at all, and down in here either. Well, like I say, maybe I'll come up with a better plan for this in another time. But like I say, I get some of it cleaned up. I think I can get in this space a little more with this Q-tip. I get a fresh one though. Need about 100. I need about 100 Q-tips, I think, to really get in here. But yeah, it's always it's an interesting sport, not only for the drivers, but you've got the driver half and the sort of engineers half. All the cool kind of engineering stuff that they've come up with to try to make these cars faster and safer as well. Now, if it was up to the owners, they probably wouldn't worry about the safety, but thankfully some Formula One drivers like Jackie Stewart put a lot of pressure on the industry to get safer, and the cars are quite a bit safer, and even quite a bit safer than these cars were, even though these were significantly safer than cars from the 60s and 70s. They have a pod for the driver, and they have a crash nose that's those increase safety quite a bit. And then they started doing Hans devices, so head and neck restraint type devices that also added to the safety. And the modern cars now have a roll hoop, which actually it adds to the safety as well. But obviously, if you have to take a lot of G's, it still can be bad for you. But we don't have anywhere near as many injuries in this sport as we used to, so that's a good thing. Oh, that was my heater running. Sorry about that. It's kind of loud. Well, that might be about all I can get done tonight on this car. I don't know if it looks any cleaner to you, but it's definitely a bit cleaner. At least some of those main layers of dust are gone, or at least somewhat gone. So, as I said, I was going to do a rather longer kind of ramble video about Formula One and this car and Michael Schumacher in general, but if I might pull that out in the future in another video. But yeah, so again, this is, I see a few more spots I want to just try. That's got a little bit of, there we go, that worked. A little bit cleaner. Yeah, so I like this design. This was a cool car. This was his last year, Michael Schumacher's last year at Benetton. After this, he went to Ferrari. And he won 5 world championships once he started winning. It took several years. He had to go back and kind of help be part of the rebuilding of that Ferrari team, which hadn't been doing that great. And that was one thing about Schumacher and his when you talk about different aspects of drivers and their strengths and weaknesses, he was very good at working with the team, building the car and working with the engineers and designers. And he really put in the time and set a model for work habits. I'm afraid it's got this little spot here, but I'm afraid to dig in there too deep. It might cause more harm than good. So, well, I hope you found this kind of unusual from a lot of my videos. I hope you found it somewhat relaxing. This is one of my passions, Formula One. And cars in general, and I've obviously done some other car videos as well. I'm sure different viewers like different styles of things, and I definitely know the car videos are popular with some people. But not everybody, I understand. But yeah, I hope you found this relaxing, and I may get this car out again another time. If you have any questions about this or some of my other Formula One stuff, shoot me a comment. If you'd like to see a particular video in this genre, might be able to make something work. I do want to go over, I have a photo album. I don't know if it's more than a photo album, it's more like a journal of a trip to Monaco that we did. I kind of want to go through that one day with you guys. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I did knock a few bits of paint off this car. Oh well, that happens, I guess. Can't keep these things pristine forever. So thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, give me a like. If you're not a subscriber, it'd be great to have you subscribe. It really helps me out. And most importantly, thanks for watching. And I just took off some paint with that one. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching again. Good night.